Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi at-tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So after discussing the Sophists' position, and that was a very anti-fitra position, they were denying reality. There's also another group that exists, and they have a claim, and this claim may act as an obstacle for us to progress further, so we might as well sort this claim out now with the Sophists. This group are called the Haliyeh group, the limboists, or the in-betweenists. And their claim is this. They say there's a third reality, which is neither existence nor non-existence. It's like saying red is neither black nor white. And Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh, in this lesson number 5, he says that why has this line of thinking come about? Why would a group of people adopt this line of thinking? And he says, we shall see why later. He didn't explain why in lesson 5. And for the life of me, I tried to find in which lesson out of the 153 he mentions the reason, but I couldn't find it and I don't recall it. It's a few years now since I last read this book. But he himself, he doesn't give the reason as to why such a group of people with such a claim, why would they have to evolve? What was it which was preoccupying them? He says, we'll come to that later in another lesson. And then he writes, and this much I want to just translate for you. So this group, they're saying there's a third reality, it's not existence and it's not non-existence. He says that which lies, Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh, that which lies in the abode of existence is existence. After all, non-existence neither is nor manifests. Non-existence is a non-reality, and non-existence can't manifest. But there is nothing to manifest. In the external world, if someone says, pointing to something, this is non-existence, this is a pure fabrication. That which is pointed at in the external world is existence. Whatever is alluded to is existence. You can't show something and say, this is non-existence. It's impossible. How can one claim that X given thing is neither existence nor non-existence? This can only be constructed in one's mind. But in reality, no such thing can happen. So, and he ends there. Lesson 5 ends here. So when someone wants to now introduce a third reality, well, first of all, non-existence wasn't a reality, and whatever is existence. To even think of another reality which is existence free, that is impossible. So this is based on lesson number 1, that whatever is existence. Now in lessons 4 and 5, the Sophists' claim and this claim of the Haliyeh group, the purpose was, the reason Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh mentioned it was that, not that they were necessarily schools of thought, okay, but they were lines of reasoning. And therefore, it's good to cleanse our line by getting rid and eliminating and disproving such interfering lines of, in quotes, reasoning. And there's no harm in doing that. It cleanses our main line. Okay, so that was lesson 5. Now we enter lesson 6. So we've said whatever is existence. We've said non-existence is impossible. There is no such thing. Then we said there are different manifestations surrounding us. We've ruled out illusions. We've ruled out in-betweens. All this much we've understood. Our intellect, we've understood this much. So the question now is, so what? Okay, you've given us all these things, so what? Although Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh doesn't say so what. I'm trying to create a narrative as we progress. Then Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh says, okay, so let me give you a prescription. This is the first practical prescription which is now disclosing. And until the end of the book, he doesn't openly discuss any practical prescriptions. The practical prescriptions in the rest of the book are very concealed. It's the process itself. But here now, because of a so what, which may arise in someone's mind after going through 5 lessons, he says, so let me give you a prescription. And we can ask why. Why do you want to give us a prescription? And he says, well, this thing, you haven't understood what these 5 lessons have been about. You've missed the plot. And there's a reason why you've missed the plot. I now have to give you a prescription for you to get back on track, and maybe further things may arise for you. He says, we've become habituated. It's an important term. We need this term, especially in practical suluk. We've become used to, habituated, accustomed to. We've become over-acquainted with the cosmos and its manifestations. These manifestations, we've become habituated with them. We've, over a period of time and years, we've seen the seeds growing into plants or trees, leading to fruits. We are seeing the manifestations around us, happening day after day, week after week, year after year, season after season. We see the embryo growing over a 9-month period in the womb of the mother. And we've become used to these manifestations. We've become very acquainted with them. So much so, we've become so habituated with them, with these manifestations surrounding us, the sun, the moon, animals, flowers, air, atoms, me. We've become so used to them now over all these years that we've lived and we've seen these things surrounding us, that we assign these things as causes. The sun is the cause of this. This flower is the cause of this. This animal does this. This is a result of becoming habituated with these manifestations around us. We assign these things as causes of other things. It's a delicate point. This is a very delicate point. That as a result of becoming acquainted, over-acquainted, over-habituated with all these things surrounding us, we assign them as causes to different things. The sun shines light, for example, and so on and so forth. We've become accustomed to this. And these are manifestations, though. All these things around us were just manifestations. Manifestations of what? We've become so drowned in the habituations, we'd never ask that question. And not only that, we've assigned them as causes to different things. Whereas these manifestations, they can't truly be causes in and of themselves. These are material things. And so in this medium of so-called causes, we're drowned. We're acquainted with these causes overly, that we don't go after the cause. Look. And this in Irfani terminology is, you are asleep. This is sleeping. And you have to wake up. So as a result of, growing and becoming old and seeing things and becoming used to things around us, not only have we forgot the cause, but with these manifestations, we assign them as causes. Now, the sun shines light is one very simple thing. You think of many other things. Since I don't want to overdo the lesson, because in the succeeding lessons, he gives his own examples. And therefore, we're drowned. Drowned in a world of causes that we have assigned to things, to the chair, to the microphone. We're drowned in our own constructed world because of being habituated with all these things. And we've lost the cause. And now we have to wake up. But there's a warning. He himself says there's a warning. Waking up from a deep sleep is not a comfortable experience. It's a bit horrific. It's very difficult. You may not be able to take it. You have to go slowly. Now this next bit, because there's some parts that I want to translate his own wording, so you get a good idea. This is how the prescription now goes. And the prescription is what? To wake up, as we've explained, not to assign causes to anything but the true cause. Not to, well, the true cause, we have some way to go yet to understand the true cause, but at least not to assign causes to these manifestations. These are manifestations of something, of existence. They're not manifestations of non-existence. Now what they are a manifestation of, we'll come to. So far we say existence. But these are manifestations. All our lives now, we're assigning these as causes. There's a problem here. You're asleep. This prescription is for you to wake up, but he's warning you. It's going to be difficult. Assume, he writes, assume we were to come into existence, i.e. our limbs, our outer inner faculties, our senses. Assume we were to come into existence instantaneously, not gradually, because we come into existence gradually from an embryo, 9 months in the womb of the mother, 2 years breastfeeding, then we grow 2 years of age, 3 years of age, then we start to learn a few things, we go to school, and we are where we are. This was a gradual process. But imagine we or you, me, we come into existence, all our bodily organs, limbs, everything. We come into existence instantaneously. Imagine that. Assume we were to come into existence instantaneously, not gradually. And then, in that very state, when we come into existence, like we are now, let's say if you're 30 years old, as a 30-year-old, you come into existence as a 30-year-old. So what? You've missed 30 years of habituation. Okay, right now, you've come into existence with all these limbs that you have now, but it came instantaneously. In that very state, set our gaze onto our surroundings. So in that instant, you set your gaze on your surroundings. You see the sun, you see the moon for the first time, without any habituation having veiled you. You set our gaze onto our surroundings in the cosmos and see the movement order, schemer, the to and fro's of the body of existence, how would our state be? What would our state be? What state would arise within us? And what thought would come to us vis-a-vis all that is surrounding us and vis-a-vis ourselves? And what fear and horror may arise for us? It's like, if we want to kind of, as an analogy, when you see something so beautiful, you've never seen it before. Although you've seen those colors before, you've seen those materials before, but it's something so new to you, you do enter a kind of experience or state. But this is now much more. In that state, what would we be after? Can you guess, for example? It's the true cause. If you were to come into existence instantaneously, now you're seeing things. You'll be after the true cause. There was no habituation in there. 30 years of habituation was absent. Those 30 years veiled you. You kept on being drowned in those manifestations, drowning yourself, asleep. In that state, what would we be after? So, in brackets, the true cause, but he doesn't mention that. What would we be thinking? In brackets, he hasn't mentioned it, but we're all nothing. Who would we be calling innately in that state? And what would we be saying? Ayatollah Hassan Salah has a poem. He says, everyone says in Farsi, ku, ku, meaning where. In one of his poems, he says, everyone is saying ku, ku. Everyone is saying where. But Hassan, his first name is Hassan, but Hassan says who, him. Look. Although he doesn't mention this poem here, but who would you be calling in that instant? You'd only be seeing him, because you didn't have those 30 years of habituation anymore. You don't see manifestations in that instant. You only see him. He writes, once one relieves oneself from habit, from this overly acquaintance, and sees the cosmos with that instantaneous look, matters will become apparent before us and will come to mind. Matters will come to mind, and certain experiences and states will be acquired and will be present before us. And he ends there. Lesson 6 ends here. So this was a prescription. It's a prescription of tafakkur, of deliberation. But it requires that state of, inner mental state of freeing yourself from assigning causes to all that is surrounding you. I don't want to give the examples yet. He brings his own examples. So he ends with this prescription here. Now this may still be a bit ambiguous for some of us. With his permission, may Allah enlighten his soul. Here, let me just give one or two Quranic examples which may just bring us back a bit. Maybe we can relate to this prescription in another way. The Quran has many stories, and this prescription of the Urafa may have been extracted or extrapolated from these different stories. Well, you all know the story of Yusuf, alayhi salam. And when he was bought and brought into the palace, Zalika was attracted to him. And over the years, she was in the presence of Yusuf and became acquainted with Yusuf, became habituated with Yusuf, because she was living with Yusuf all these years. The attraction was always there, but she did become used to it, to some degree at least. However, the ladies of aristocracy in the palace, they weren't used to Yusuf. They weren't living with Yusuf. They may have never seen Yusuf. They had heard stories that Zalikha's become infatuated by a slave. This ukhruj alayhin, when Yusuf was said, come and enter upon the women who are now in the room waiting. Well, not waiting, they didn't know. But when the order was given for Yusuf to enter, ukhruj alayhin, Yusuf entered. فَلَمَّا رَأَيْنَهُ, when they, the ladies of aristocracy, when they saw him, أَكْبَرْنَهُ, they deemed him as grand. They had never seen such a thing. أَكْبَرْنَهُ. They woke up. They woke up to something. It was outside the jurisdiction of what they were habituated with. And the consequence was, وَقَطَّعْنَا أَيْدِيَهُنْ. They cut their hands. They were out of control. This is the warning that Ayatollah Hassan Zada was saying. You have to beware. When you want to wake up from a deep sleep, it's going to be very difficult. There will be consequences. Zalikha was used to Yusuf, to some degree at least, but they weren't. That's one. What about the story of Musa alayhi salam? The story of the mountain. So there in the Quran it says, فَلَمَّا تَجَلَّى رَبُّهُ لِلْجَبَلِ, that when Allah tajalla, manifested himself to the mountain, ja'alahu dakka, Allah rendered it level, like crumbled. Then وَخَرَّ Musa sa'iqa, Musa, he fell unconscious. Why? Why did he fall unconscious? This lesson gives the answer, the secret. And when he fell unconscious, the mountain was where it was. It didn't physically crumble. The mountain was intact. So why did Musa fall unconscious? وَخَرَّ مُوسَى سَائِقًا. Because many people, everyone, they see the mountain as a cause. They see the sun as a cause for shining, the mountain as a cause in being a mountain and doing what it does, keeping the earth, for example, stable. But once you lose or eliminate the causeness of anything, the causeness of that mountain, that's eliminated. You don't see, not academically, the heart doesn't see the mountain as a cause. You've freed yourself from these habituations. In this case, it was with the mountain being a cause, but you assigned the mountain as 0% cause. The mountain is still there, but it's as if it's crumbled. Why? Because you don't assign it anything. You see Allah as the cause. If you say, for example, the cause of the mountain, its cause is to keep the earth stable. Once you succeed by freeing yourself from all habituations when you look at the mountain, you assign it 0% causality. And that in your heart, the mountain crumbles. And there you see the true cause. That's what killed him spiritually. And he fell unconscious. And then he woke up and he gave a dhikr. So this is a very important prescription here. Look, that's what this sixth one came after 5 lessons, but he was suspicious that maybe we've lost the plot here. Don't lose or drown yourself in the manifestations. The cause is important. Okay, we'll stop here and see if there are any questions, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala tahirin. We decided to, every 2 lessons, to take a break just in case people have questions, and then I'll continue. Yes.
Is it recommended to go through some experiences like in nature, like climbing a mountain or deep sea diving or skydiving, take you to that?
Yeah, I mean, yes.
We are in this mundane life.
Yes.
We don't face these experiences
Yes.
willingly unless you get a big accident.
Yes, yes.
To go into that state.
Yes. So that would be a very useful thing to do, yes. Because when you go, they say, deep sea diving or snorkeling, or if you go in the mountains, especially when you're not a mountainous person, you weren't brought up in the mountains, and you see, that can be a trigger, yes. Yes. Okay, so we'll continue. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Lesson number 7. So here it seems that we've taken things for granted. We kept on seeing the normal things, we assigned them causes, we saw them as causes, we assigned them with causality. And this prescription in lesson 6 has guided us to some degree, and it was in relation to things outside us. The prescription itself was, if you were to come into existence instantaneously, now look at the things surrounding you. So it was based on things outside us. Now what if we go inside us and go into more minute or finer detail, or things inside the body, or maybe even inner states, and then, break from them. These habits that we're used to, with these states that we have, break from these habituations. That was before, it was in relation to things around us we were habituated with, now things within us. He gives many examples. Now sometimes I don't bring all the examples, because sometimes he gives pages and pages of examples, so I don't cover them, I just suffice with a few. He says that sometimes our saliva is sweet, and at times our saliva is sour. And these are things that we see. He says sometimes we see things, we hear things, we learn things, we forget things, we recall things. Then he says, what are these things? And he says, it reminds you that with that instantaneous look again, things that we see within ourselves, we hear, even things like saliva or things inside, looking at that with that instantaneous look, what are they? Where did they come from? Why do they come? With that instantaneous look again. Why do we experience them? Why do we attribute it to me? You say, I laugh, I cry. This laughing with that instantaneous look. What is it? The answer is the same as the previous lesson. Only the applications are different now. It's now laughing, the state of laughing, the state of crying. We've become habituated and we see them as causes to different things. But with that instantaneous look, this laughing, what is it? This crying, what is it? When you show love to a child, where does this love come from? What is this state of loving? We've become habituated with all these states as well. Then he gives more examples. Then he stops with those questions. What are they? Just like the previous session. And the answer is just like the previous session too. Laughing, crying, things happening to you, the same answer. It's all him, but that realization is not there because we've become habituated to these states as causes and we're asleep. He stops here in the same lesson. He changes direction now and says, okay, let's go outside ourselves again. The inner states that he explained, let's go outside, look at the world around us. He says that we see people, animals, plants, stones, and just by looking and observing, we see that everything, whatever qualifies as a thing, is in the process of moving. Everything is moving. With animals and humans, it's easy to see that. With plants, it's also easy, but it's a bit less apparent, but plants also move. They grow, develop. What about with stones? That's very difficult for us. But we know stones move also in the sense that gold, silver, copper, all these were earth. But here with stones, over a period of millions of years, the earth slowly evolved into gold, for example, or diamonds or whatever. So we see that just by observing our surroundings, everything is in the process of moving. Look, there's no need anyone to teach us this. Our fitra is saying, look, everyone is moving. Why are they moving? It's an important question. These questions are very important. He's going to answer all of them. But there's no point in me answering it now because he'll answer it in a succeeding lesson. Why are they moving? We've just established, it wasn't difficult, that whatever it qualifies as a thing in this external world is moving. But why are they moving? Who is moving them? Do they need to move? And if so, what for? What's the purpose? And if they need to move, this creature's or plant or creature covers plants, stones, everything. This creation's need, if it needs to move, if we have X, Y, Z different creatures, is the need the same? The need to move, is it the same or is it different? Here he opens this a bit and says X, Y, and Z creature which need to move, they move because they are lacking something. They are deficient in something. And they want to become something else, more perfect. Perfection is the opposite of deficiency. Whatever qualifies as a thing moves. They need to move. And the reason is because they are lacking something. They're moving to acquire that which they are deficient in. So the question of perfection arises here. everything is moving towards perfection. But with a stone, perfection is different to the perfection of a plant, to the perfection of an animal, to the perfection of a human. So they are in need of something, and that's why they move to get rid of this deficiency. But then another question he poses, why are they deficient in the first place? And with respect to that which they are moving towards, is that thing more perfect? For example, the seed is moving day after day until it becomes a tree, and it moves until it gives fruit. You know, this is a process. The perfection of everything is different. The perfection of that tree is when it's giving its fruit. But from the seed stage to the giving the fruit stage, this seed was moving. The seed didn't have something. It needed to move to get that which it has the potential to get. That's the duty of the seed. The seed is following a protocol of obedience. The seed is following a protocol of submission. And this route, this journey of the seed to fruit, the seed to the fruit, this whole process, this can be given a name. But the name he discusses in the next session. But this was a duty, and the seed obeys this duty. What was the duty? Here it was to give fruit. That's the duty of the seed. And that's why a seed, the orange seed for example, that's why it moves. It doesn't have something right now as a seed, but it has the potential. It gets rid of a deficiency, it goes to the next stage. It's still deficient in areas, it's moving. Moment after moment it's moving, it's deficient, gets something, then deficient, until it reaches its objective, its duty, objective. Then this journey is given a name. He gives the name in the next session. Then Ayatollah Hassan says, okay, that was a seed. What is our duty? We're moving too. All these people who are moving, me and you, what are they? Who are they? From where have they come? Who brought them? For what purpose? What are they moving for? What are they striving for? What is the objective? What is their duty? And what's the name given to this journeying in relation to humans? It's the same name given to the journey of the seed. It's just that the objective is different. The potentials are different. The deficiencies are different. The need is different. And he stops there with lesson 7. Then we go into lesson 8, continuing from lesson 7. And he takes time. See, these lessons were given over a period of 7 or 8 years. So he would go to the north, give them the lessons, then he would go back. Next week he would come, sometimes the next fortnight, sometimes 2 or 3 months had passed. And so maybe it was done on purpose for people to absorb things. If you give to people too much at once, they may become overdosed, for example. Yes. So in lesson 8 now he wants to maybe divert again, but he'll come back to lesson 7 soon. So here now we're looking at different states. First we looked outside ourselves, our surroundings, then we looked inside ourselves. And all these things and states that we said, laughing, crying, things outside us, they all exist. That much we've established by now. And they're all part of the whole abode of existence. Nothing was non-existent. These were all real. We cleansed ourselves from sophistry, from that line of sophistry. We cleansed ourselves from the Haliya group of people. Don't speak about existence anymore. That's now a given. All is, after all. These exist. And whatever lies in the abode of existence is naturally part of existence. But pay attention to the word naturally. There's more to what it seems. Then he says, so all the things we're seeing, they are part of existence. It's not non-existence. He says we can compare the whole of existence to a body, like a human body, for example. And the whole of existence to a body, and each one of the creations or creatures, these part of this abode of existence, like the sun, the moon, animal, plant, they are like parts of the body. He says we can make such an analogy. It may help us, because the relationship between the body and its parts, there's something there. If that is open before us, we may even appreciate the relationship between the abode of existence as a whole and the different existing creatures within it. So he says, okay, let's scrutinize this a bit more. And as you've established by now, his way of scrutiny is through questions. He gives the principles in between, but he wants you to find the answer to the questions. The more you find the answer, something is happening to you. And he'll explain that later too. This is part of the process. He says these parts of the abode of existence, the sun, the moon, earth, animals, plants, are these associated? Are they linked with one another? Or are they disassociated and they're not related to one another? Here, maybe our fitra here, we don't need a teacher. At the first glance, we will say, no, everything is linked. If there was no sun, there would be no plants. If there was no moon, there would be no this. We see nature around us. There are some birds that fly the Atlantic, and what they do is they take soil from this side of the Atlantic, they fly with it, and they place the soil in the other side of the Atlantic. Look, it's difficult to say there's not a reason behind it. These are all linked to one another. So this much we can understand, that things around us, the sun, moon, animals, plants, it's like those ecology chains you may have come across in biology, and when everything's linked with one another. It's not like a mosquito analyzing an elephant. You know, the mosquito looks at the ear of the elephant, looks at the feet, the tail, looks at the ivory tusks. The mosquito may come up with, no, these are all disassociated with one another. It's an elephant, but these parts are totally disassociated. No, we don't have that mosquito glance. Just looking around us, doing a bit of biology, geography, science, the fitra guides us, no, everything is linked. They're not disassociated. Okay, so the next question then. Given it's linked and associated, what is the nature of this linkage? What is the nature of this things being associated with one another? Is it like the linkage and association of bricks of a building where they're all linked with one another? Or is it like the parts of a watch where they're all linked to one another? Is it a mechanical linkage? Or no, is it an organic association with one another? Like the parts of a human body, where if you take one organ out, the whole body may come to an end. Whereas if it was a mechanical linkage and you took one part out, you can replace it very easily. Even if you don't, it won't lead to the crumbling of the whole building. So is it a mechanical linkage, or is it an organic association? Or is there another form of association that we may not be aware of? And here, these parts of this abode of existence with its different parts, the sun, the moon, animals, plants, do they work in harmony with one another? Do they depend on one another or not? And if there was no interdependency, if there was no interplaying, then that would be catastrophic. No plant will grow. No existence would remain for too long. That they all decompose. You take one link from the ecology chain away, sooner or later it leads to the end of life. You can't miss a link. Now, after giving that, then he says, look, let's take plants for example. Some plants lead to sweet products. Some plants lead to bitter products. Some plants lead to trees which are hard, and you have hard wood. Some lead to wood which is soft. He says all these different types of plants with different manifestations. All these maximally enable different creatures to live on the planet, to survive, to persist. People, animals, plants, they continue in their survival. And all these different traits, these different characteristics, they really exist. It's not non-existence. And if they exist, they come from existence. And they're all linked together. This much we've understood. But then he asks a question. And he ends this lesson with this question. Okay, they're all linked together, but they're linked through what? Look, we have the abode of existence that we discussed in lesson 1. Now we have these different manifestations. They're parts of this abode of existence. We've said they're all linked with one another. They're dependent on one another. But they're linked through what? What is the linkage factor? And that thing, is it physical or not? The next question is that even with the human parts of our body, because the analogy was our body with the different parts of the body. We said, yes, this is also linked. We said the linkage is organic in nature. Okay, you take one organ, it may lead to the decomposition of the whole body. What are these human parts linked through? Yes, they're dependent. The liver dependent on the heart dependent on other things. But what are they linked through? What is linking them? Is it something material, another limb? Or is it not material? What is making that body intact, as we are now? What is making the body persist? And if that linkage factor is absent, what will happen to the human body? Look. And he ends here again. He ends here with lesson 8. So inshallah, I'll end here. And if there are any questions, I'm at your service. We did, I think, 4 lessons today, inshallah. These questions are important. It has to be digested. If you can go through them, think about it, pontificate over it, this is a process itself. وصلى الله على محمد وعلى الطاهرين.